Hey everyone, and welcome to Inside Board Games. Get ready for a terrible interview. And we're talking to John Campos of Terrible Games, so we'll see if that was an ironic comment or not. How you doing today, John?
Doing very good, thank you. Appreciate the acknowledgement of our cheeky board game publishing name.
Yeah, I want to get into that. Where that name came from. I know that you do a lot of interviews, do a lot of stuff. We're going to get into your hustle in just a second. But what I kind of thought I would do is, you probably get asked that question a lot. And I decided that instead of asking a whole bunch of like different questions than other interviewers, I'm just going to ask the same questions everyone else does. And I thought it'd be fun if you just gave different answers.
I'll try my best. I like where your head's at, just starting off.
So like, terrible games, it could be like, your first cat was named Terrible. Or it's a misspelling. It was supposed to be Treble Games. I'm a big audio person. We just misprint and we went with it. So those are just some ideas for you.
Sure, yeah. Terrible Games. Because we felt like we needed to get our expectations really, really low so that we could blow those expectations out of the water when they get the game to the table. That was basically it. You put the bar as low as you can, right. Then it's impossible not to jump over it. So there you go.
Yeah. Over deliver, under promise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just tell them straight out of the gate. Terrible Games. If that's a promise, and then we burst that expectation and really
right,
go above and beyond. It's easy to go above and beyond from there.
Yeah. So Terrible Games, I read 30 seconds ago on my phone before we went online when I was doing my research for this interview, that it was founded in 2017.
Correct.
So are you like 23 years old, or did you do like stuff before that?
I did stuff before that. I'm actually going to be turning 41 next month.
Oh, okay. I remember 41 way back in the rear view.
Yeah. 2017. That's when we had the idea to be like, let's make a board game, I guess. But if you, as you mentioned, you did your research, so you know that we didn't actually intend to make a board game. We were making miniatures first. We wanted to make dice-sized miniatures that were easy to carry around, that weren't expensive and weren't gonna get broken if you take them everywhere you go. So you could generate cool-looking, like 3-dimensional, character-specific miniatures for token creatures and Magic Gathering. I'm a big Magic nut, and then 2017 was the founding, and we didn't do our first project until 2020.
Oh, okay.
I felt like I had been working on token terrors in general longer than 2017, but I think 2017 is when we decided, like, we're going to file for an LLC and actually write up equity agreements and get our EIN number and open an account and do all that stuff.
Okay. What's your background? I mean, what do you do for, before that? Or I'm assuming that Terrible Games takes up all your time. That you're doing this full time, and that's your thing. Or, are you a graphic designer by day and game designer by night? Yeah.
I'm a stay-at-home dad by all the time.
Okay.
And I figure out I have a couple hours throughout the day when I'm not doing stuff for the kiddo. She's almost 9 now, but it's mostly like packing lunches and taking her to and from school and doing stuff with her friends after school sometimes, or picking up after violin, that kind of thing. But my partner works from home. She is a absolute superhero and kicks butt at work and makes enough money to basically make sure that we're not going to be in trouble if my ends don't meet from month to month.
Okay.
The way I make money is by doing illustration work. And it's tough to actually issue out time to, it's not even about time, really. It's about the mental real estate that I have to be doing project management for the board game company. And all of that stuff is always very time sensitive. And also just dislodging my brain from that type of work to having creative ideas and building up the internal structures of an image or a composition in my head. You have to spend time with a project in your brain before you actually try to go execute it. And in the freelance illustration world, it's tough to make room for that structural building before I can actually do the work. So I'm kind of in this internal struggle silently where if I'm trying to gear up for an illustration project,
Hmm.
I have to like actively tell the voice in my head telling me to check up with manufacturers and get that rulebook editing thing I need to get done finished. I need to not think about that for a while. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, basically, I split my work time, which is on average between 3 and 7 hours a day, depending on my energy levels, between illustration work and board game stuff for our publishing company.
Okay. I yeah, yeah. I was always curious about that because I know some people, their board game design is a side thing, and some people it's their only thing. And yeah, I can respect the hustle. I had mentioned that before, and I just kind of wanted to tell our viewers, when it comes to John's hustle, um, he has more hustle than Rick Ross in 2006. He
Hey,
has more hustle than a 70s themed suburban high school prom.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. You know what the thing is, really, is like I said, my spouse is she's like the financial like she carries us. She provides for our company, and what I'm doing at Terrible Games is an investment, right?
Yeah.
I think in this industry, you really have to be in it to win it for the long haul. It's great if you release that lightning in a bottle game. It's your first release, and you raise $1 million. You know what?
Yeah.
I bow down to you. I'm happy for you. That's great. But you can't rely on those outcomes. Those things happen. That kind of outcome is a confluence of a lot of different things, and luck is one of the main contributors. I think that everybody doing work in the board game industry is doing enough work to be successful if they feel like they have a good product, you
Yeah.
know. But
It,
that being said, the idea, as much as I love doing illustration work, grinding that kind of work out on a regular basis, especially given my relationship to art and creative work and how I'd
mhm.
like to be doing more stuff for myself, it really starts to tarnish the experience. To be honest with you, where you're just working on other people's projects all the time. I'd love to be doing publishing full time, and I'm hoping that we're moving towards that point where it can start to be a financial contributor to our household in a bigger way. It's not
Mhm.
making nothing. It's doing okay.
Right.
But I'm not at the point right now where like the equity holders and myself are like pulling a paycheck. Nobody's making salary over here yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sort of covers my next question because after talking to most of these board game designers, I'm sorry, are you a Bugatti guy or a Ferrari guy? But sounds like
I am a Toyota Prius owner, driver, and lifelong pilot. That's what I'll be. I'll never own another type of car unless I need more cargo room because I love my Prius, dude.
okay. It has nothing to do with that you can't afford a Bugatti. It's just because you love the Prius, right?
I'm going to keep it 100 with you right now. Let's just say that one of our games made $3 million. All right, and I was able to talk my partners into letting me take a bonus of I don't know 200,000. The absolute last thing I would do with that money is buy a luxury car or a sports car. There is not a world where I do something like that ever. If I was going to get a cool car, it would be a 1978 Ford flat front van that is painted matte black with red lightning bolts going down the side quarter panel, just completely knocked to the floor. Tiny little wheels, big old mufflers coming off the side with like an evil wizard on the back with the teardrop windows and
Yeah.
the rack with the ladder and the floodlights on the roof, dude. It would be I would it would have teeth on the front grill. It'd be absolutely mean looking.
What
I would get a weird hot rod if I was gonna spend money needlessly.
wasn't that the wasn't there some cartoon back in the day with some like dune buggy or something? I think you're describing like the evil car from that cartoon series.
Oh, I mean, yeah. There's, I mean, the guy who I can't remember the name of the artist, but Ratfink. Just generally,
Oh,
what I
okay.
want to do is I want to take a Ratfink car and just put it in the real world, and also drive it.
Nice. Nice. I wanted to talk to you about the some of the conventions and stuff that you go to. This sort of goes in with the hustle. I've seen some of your TikToks that you put out before and during PAX United or PAX Unplugged,
Sure.
which they should just change the name to TikTok Unplugged because it seemed like a lot of TikTok people there. Um, do you do a lot of those? And how does that kind of fit in? Is that sort of like the bulk of your outreach? How's that sort of fit into the overall marketing?
It's funny because I continue to have this conversation with other people in the industry about the role that in-person table events play as it relates to board games. And yeah, so it's kind of tricky. I learned this year from going to a lot more shows that I'm never going to go to another show that is about a niche culture. Because if it's a niche culture that's not the board game hobby, like if it's strictly anime or if it's strictly vintage comics or if it's strictly toys or
Hmm.
whatever it is, the people who come to these conventions, they're not interested about learning about new things. They want to celebrate the thing they're there to be there for, like anime or comic books or old toys.
Hmm.
When they if they come in and they're expecting to see all this stuff that they're already familiar with, and you want to stop them and be like, hey, stop for a second, let me educate you about this thing you've never heard of, let me try to get you to buy this thing that you've never seen before. It just doesn't really click. We've broken even on pretty much everything, but that's even like, man, I did a full install the day before. It probably took me about 3 hours, and then I went and worked an event that started at 9 in the morning, and I was there until 6 p.m. Plus loadout was a 7 p.m.
Ooh.
And stuff coming in and out of the car. The table was $125. I made $150. It's like that's that's just busted, man. But you know what? It was a toy convention. People weren't there to get a board game. They were there to buy a He-Man figure from 1984. You just have to be careful and selective about where you go. The ones that do work, I do a flea market, a punk rock flea market at a local bar and concert venue that I love called the Auto Bar here in Baltimore.
Okay.
Um, I set up a table there. You know what? That is an open market with a bunch of just random stuff. You don't know what you're gonna find when you walk in.
Sure.
I made like 3 grand selling board games at the flea market. Okay,
Nice.
the table cost me $30. It was a complete slam dunk, and the reason is that people walk in, they're not there with an agenda to find a specific thing. They're there to just discover whatever they encounter.
Wow.
Conventions that do that, if you just go to an open convention market where like there isn't a hard niche or there isn't a hard push in one specific sector of their fandom, you have a much better chance of getting people walking in with an open mind. And then with the board game conventions, the trade-off is every single person that you interact with is going to be interested on a basic level because they're
Hmm.
board game hobbyists. However, they are surrounded by all of their favorite goodies, so they're going to be prioritizing their dollars around maybe finding that rare release they can't find, or just waiting to see what else they see. And if you don't grab them in the moment, it can be tough to wait for them to come back and grab another thing at a later time. Yeah, the
Do,
return though. Sorry, if I just want to finish this last thing. I don't want to keep like talking forever. The thing to remember about these in person events is that it is a marketing expense. A lot of times, unless you really optimize your booth and unless you do some marketing about your appearance at these events and how you're going to do like exclusive cards or special pins or whatever it is, unless you can really maximize excitement and get a lot of sales at these events, they basically function as a marketing tool because what you're doing is you're just getting FaceTime with people who you want to have interact with your things.
mhm.
So, like at PAX Unplugged this year, we had a wonderful time. We met a bunch of great people. We made like $100 after cost. That's just the nature of how it goes. And
Well, you're hoping that those people you met will, you know, be beneficial later.
exactly, because if you onboard them and they end up loving your game, and every once in a while you get some people who really love your game, they tell their friends about it, and then you sell more games later. And also, maybe they don't buy anything right then, but you had a nice conversation, you told them about your stuff, and they're like, "Oh, those guys are terrible. Games are cool." Next time we run a Kickstarter campaign, boom, they show up and they give us a full pledge, or they deluxe pledge, or they get a bunch of add-ons, or whatever it is. So, yeah, it's about I think it's about having the connections, about people meeting you,
Sure.
seeing who you are, and seeing how you do things, and that is worth way more than any ad they're going to see on social media. Yeah, that's really what the in-person events are about, in my opinion.
Do you go to Gen Con?
We applied this year. We're going to see what happens because of the size of our company and our resources. Like flying two of us out there and doing the booth and figuring out freight transport for goods because we can't drive it out there ourselves. That's a whole enchilada, and we're gonna try to eat that enchilada this year if they allow us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just kind of a side note, as I talk to these more and more of these game designers doing this show, it's I don't have a sense of scale as far as like what someone does and how big it is. What sort of different versions of success are.
Sure.
And
Yeah. I mean, with PAX Unplugged, the thing is like the optics of just being there in general it means you're a player. It means that you're in the industry and people are going to see, even in passing. It sends a message about where you are as a company. And for us, it's a no brainer to go to PAX every year because it's in Philly. It's a 2 hour drive.
Right.
So like for us, it absolutely makes sense. But you take the booth cost, which is around $1,500,
Mm-hmm.
plus a hotel for 2 nights. And then if you want to bundle in gas and maybe a round of drinks after the convention on Saturday, and maybe a dinner for the people who are working your booth for 8 hours straight, and everything else, blah 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 blah. You add it all up, we made like $100, but that's because we were in it for almost $3,500, all said and done. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's the way that it goes.
And it sounds like it's kind of a passion thing too. And it seems like such a no-brainer, but I do a lot of interviews like this during my day job, and it has nothing to do with board games. When I'm asking people, so why did you start a splatter art studio, here in this suburban strip mall? And a lot of times the answer has nothing to do with passion. They'll say, well, our franchise consultant did the market research for this area, and there's this one would be the most profitable. And I'm just like, wow, that's great. I always expect people to say like, oh, I've always loved art, and I've always loved this stuff, but it just, maybe I'm just naive. But it just sort of seems to me that if I'm going to go into business for myself, and I'm going to make the commitment that it requires to go into business for myself and to do something, it's going to come from the heart. Because if I'm, busting my tail for something that I don't like, but I don't know, whatever. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to get into other people and why they do things.
I mean, you know what? I have just found so much joy and so much companionship in my life as a board gamer, as specifically as it relates to Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, which is where I kind of cut my teeth as a tabletop game
Yeah,
person.
me too.
And for whatever reason, Magic led me into this thing where we wanted to make a board game, and that turned into a business. And now, we're on our fourth Kickstarter campaign, and not trying to brag, but I ran the numbers yesterday because I didn't know what the numbers were. We've raised $128,000 on Kickstarter, which I had no idea. That wasn't really part. I'm not saying it wasn't part of the plan. I
Right.
wish we had made way more than that.
Well, but you probably didn't plan for that much.
No, I didn't plan to keep doing this. I mean, I wanted to do it for a long time. The idea behind Token Terrors is that it's an expanding universe that's going to keep going, as long as people are interested in doing it. But the other games that we released are just a byproduct of different choices that have happened along, our journey as a company. And that includes releasing Volca, and that includes Black Mold rushing to production and getting, not rushing per se.
Mm-hmm.
Black Mold, there were some circumstances that surrounded that release that made it so it moved up in our production schedule. The initial plan when we did our Kickstarter was
Mm-hmm.
Token Terrors to be immediately followed up by Token Terrors Season 2. We saw a good reaction for our first release. We raised almost 30 grand as a first time funder on Kickstarter. And the plan was Season 2 was going to come straight out the pike. It's ready. Like the whole game is like ready to go. We're going to crowdsource it in the spring. But because we ended up syncing this co-publishing deal with Black Mold,
Mm-hmm.
it had to be moved up. And Black Mold is a massive game. And it also completely splits the road on the kinds of interests and the kinds of players that know about us already, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not a follow-up to Token Terrors. So there's all these decisions and things that kind of lead you down this road of where you end up as a publishing company. For us, it's been basically 4 completely different games that have nothing to do with each other.
Right. Yeah, I want to talk about some of your games, and I want to talk about some of the stuff that you've done. The Black Mold, that's the game where your turn lasts as long as you can hold your breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Where do you come up with your ideas, man? That's
There was a big name designer. There's a documentary on Netflix. It's called Game Masters. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
okay.
And there was okay, so we were locked in the house. It was COVID. I just got done playing Last of Us 2. Loved it. Loved Last of Us. And a big name designer. I don't remember what it was, but I want to say it was the dude who created Ankh.
Okay.
He was like, yeah, like being purely original, like by definition, is really hard. Like people say be original, but they don't actually understand what they mean when they say that, because actually doing that is extremely difficult, especially given the cycle of pop culture and media that we have right now.
Right.
So if you can come up with something that feels really new and feels really different and subverts the norm a little bit, that's a really good first step into leading some design choices, because anything that feels novel or different can really, like, shock people
Yeah,
out of,
I think
and
you can repackage mechanics. You can repackage the same mechanics in a different environment and create a whole new gaming experience each time.
absolutely, because people have, so first of all, play group is a huge factor determining how people enjoy media, and especially in the board game, hobby. Like, if you have a solid play group that you play with who know how to have fun, to joke around, maybe rib each other a little bit,
Mm.
describe attacks, they light up a little bit when you start playing a game. That can completely that can completely open up the doors to a completely different experience for each game that you encounter. But
Hmm.
also, it's a huge thing about how you interface art and how you interface theme. But all of that being said, immediately when the dude was saying that, I was thinking about, like, this confluence of things just hit my brain. Number one, we were living in a world in real life where just being outside in general and breathing was dangerous. Number two, I just plays Last of Us, which has mushroom men running around everywhere. Uh, and number three, dude was like, think of something that feels kind of new, but probably, is just a little bit unassuming and novel. And I was like, oh man, what if we made a game where you turn last as long as you can hold your breath? The title Black Mold immediately hit my head because, people have black mold in their house. They can't breathe in their own house.
Right.
And then I started thinking about, a mycelium mist that not only slowly poisons you, but also starts to make you trip balls and, like, have paranoid thoughts and hallucinate. So I immediately picked up the phone and called Phil Docolo, our co-designer and partner in Terrible Games, and I was like, I got an idea for a game. It's called Black Mold. Your turn lasts as long as you can hold your breath. It's got to be scary, and it's going to have mushroom people in it. And he was like, cool. That sounds awesome. I'm going to come up with some stuff, and I'll hit you up in a couple days. And from there, yeah, he created some base mechanics. It started off with a lot of some, like, number puzzle kind of things,
Uh-huh.
and we both got really excited about the initial design. And over the course of like 4 weeks, we basically took it from a phone call idea
Hmm.
to a finished prototype from the game crafter that was on our table. And
Holy cow.
yeah, I was locked up, man. I knocked out the art for it in 10 days. I did the artwork for it in 10 days,
Yeah.
checked out the mechanics, and then we play tested it to death while we were in lockdown.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. We were doing a lot of dying because player elimination is a thing in Black Mold. You can absolutely get eliminated if you don't play your cards right, and that's also literal, not just.
Right. So okay, so that's how that idea came up. It's interesting. I've talked to some people. I always thought that the theme comes first, and it sounds like in this case the theme kind of came first, and then the mechanics.
They really happened at the same time. The
Oh,
building thing and the title Black Mold was one thought.
see, I always thought it'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do a space game with moons, and then okay, this is what the art's going to look like, and all right, well, how's this game going to play? In my mind, it's like that's the progression. But
Well,
I know that for some people, it's like I want a game with these kind of mechanics, and then they're like, okay, well, in what kind of world would those mechanics exist? And then they kind of came up with a theme. That's fascinating.
sure. Yeah, I mean, every time people ask, this will happen every once in a while. If you're not familiar, anybody who's listening, if you're not familiar, there's a group on Facebook called the Board Game Design Lab. It's an excellent group. There's very low levels of toxicity there, and people are very supportive and there to help you on your board game design and publishing journey.
Hmm.
Okay, that being said, every couple of months somebody will pop in there and go like, "What's a theme you've never seen done that you'd love to see in the hobby?" I always answer the same. I always answer the same. I want to make a game about being the headmaster of a surgical school at the turn of the century when surgical medicine was being developed and every school needed a constant influx of cadavers in order to have classes. And what this did was birth the cottage industry of grave robbing, where people ended up inevitably murdering people in order to make money off their dead bodies, selling them to medical schools. There is an ethical gray decision space in being that person in that ecosystem that I absolutely love. And I've started roughing out designs. It's called Cardavers is the name of the game. It's going to have dice placement. It's going to have a part where you're expanding your school. And basically what you're trying to do is you're going to try to stave off suspicion from the townspeople that you are basically a body factory. And then
Right.
and you're going to be trying to turn over as many cadavers and get scientific breakthroughs as possible while expanding the grounds to your school. And it's starting to take shape. I want it to be a mint tin game, small.
Okay.
But this is a theme that I wanted to see, and obviously we've seen dice placement. We've seen stuff with like progress tracks where you're maximizing your actions by getting additional abilities, right?
Right.
But what we haven't seen is a game where people are going to have to make the decision about whether they're going to hire a gang of cemetery roving miscreants to dig up a corpse in order for them to win the game. Okay, that's not been done before. So you gotta find your lane. They call us terrible games for a lot of reasons, but one of them is like we like to do spooky, weird stuff like that.
Right. No, that's awesome. I kind of love I love the weird, quirky, kind of spooky, games like
See horrified right behind you. There you go.
yeah, that one's kind of cool. But like the apocryphy, plague doctors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, man.
And the one that you described, that looks awesome too.
Thank you.
Hiring the roving band of grave robbers. It's
That's the part of the design that's been weird because I want there to be a suspicion meter that every player has to be aware of and they have to be worried about. So there's going to be not really hidden roles, but there's got to be this thing where people are silently and secretly paying for the grave robbers
Yeah.
to do their dirty work for them. Because it was this unspoken rule. Literally, like the chancellors of the town, the surgical school people, and the gang of body snatchers, they all understood what was going on. It was openly known by most of the townspeople.
Okay.
And they acknowledged, anyway, I've been doing research on the subject because also as it serves the theme, like I want it to be accurate. So the only other ways that surgical schools got bodies during that time was when a criminal was executed, which only happened like 2 or 3 times a month,
Uh-huh.
or if somebody died in the poorhouse and nobody claimed them. So like
Oh, okay.
there's gonna be static input of bodies that are gonna happen, but if you want to ramp up and you want to get more
Yeah.
fast, you have to start dealing with people who are ethically on the fringe.
People who are ethically on the fringe. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the grave robbers are helping the medical schools figure out how to do science. It's a little altruistic sort of, but they want to get paid for their work.
They're saving lives ultimately, with these scientific advancements.
That's not hyperbole. That's actually true. Despite the fact that grave robbing is very off-putting and not cool.
Don't try this at home.
If they hadn't done that, then I don't know. We might not just be behind.
Right.
I used to believe that gas, miasmic medicine,
Mhm.
used to think they put like a glass thing around your head and put gas into it, and that would help you not be sick. The history of medical science is actually incredibly interesting. I've been
Oh yeah.
doing it a little bit, trying to get ready for this game.
Yeah, I mean, just from what little I've, just wandering through my life and this planet, you pick up things here and there, and it's just some crazy stuff,
Oh yeah,
in the medical field and some other fields too. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a weird world that we live in. So, let's make our games just as weird.
hopefully.
Talk to me a little bit about your newest game, Valka. I mean, I'm sure you're probably not sick of talking about that right now.
No, I love talking about our games. Yeah, Volca is a 1 to 5 card clash and dice game that breaks all the rules. It doesn't. There's no card cost. There's no action points, and there's no hand limit, and there's also no mercy. So, as I mentioned before, I'm a Magic the Gathering player, and what really impressed me about the initial design that the creator Brooke Penrose brought to the table when he decided to let us develop the game is that everything you know about a trading card game and a card battling game is just absent in the design space of this game. Because there's no limit to the number of cards you can play. You just need to be aware of what cards are in play, just scanning the table state and controlling tempo and making measured decisions based on what you have in your hand and what's in play. And you can burn through your hand if you want, but if you're sitting there for the next 2 rounds with 1 or 0 cards in your hand, you're going to find yourself at a really big disadvantage. So this is a game that the mechanics might take a game or two to click with. I think that's true for pretty much every board game that exists out there, unless it's like Candyland or Shoots and Ladders. And
I'll get those down one of these days.
there you go. And so it's this multiplayer game where you're going to be creating a front line of fighters who have to attack every turn. They're also going to be defending. There is a cumulative damage. Then you have your back line of fighters. So that's 2 horizontal 4-card tableaus. The guys in your back line can be infinitely edited. So you can return them to hand. You can play them face down as traps. You can put events in your back line face down and have it resolve as a trap. You can buff your fighters back there, and all of this stuff you can just rearrange it however you want. The thing to remember though is that if you do some light set collection and
Hmm.
get two or more members from the same warband in your back line, when your front line is completely depleted, when they've taken enough damage for them to all get destroyed out of the front line, immediately your back line moves in. And if you have matching warband members move into the front line at the same time, there's this devastating game breaking warband boon ability that's going to trigger, that's going to like anger pretty much everybody at the table. um, it's very take that. It's high player interaction. The whole game is just player interaction, back and forth, back and forth. There's a little bit of table talk and politics because you can try to get people to leave you alone, or you can even
Hmm.
threaten them. You can point at your back line and go, "Look, I got three face down cards back here. Y'all can keep on messing with me and keep on messing with my front line. See what happens when my back line moves in.
Right.
Like, at your own risk." And yeah, we found that it's a beer and pretzels casual, warm up game. I think it can play in 20 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
Um,
That's important
and
because
yeah,
if I'm going to be playing I prefer cooperative games, or if it's competitive, it's more of a PVE, where I'm not messing you up. It's just we're both trying to fight the one big bad, and whoever fights them the best,
sure.
that type thing. But if it's strictly, head to head, I'm going to mess with you, you're going to mess with me. I prefer those to be shorter, so I can get more in. I don't want to sit there. I always say I don't want to sit there for four hours and then lose.
Yeah. No, it's very chaotic. There's a lot of card interactions and things that are triggering at different times. Um, and that's the experience we wanted. We wanted people yelling at each other and having drinks and hanging out with buddies and having a good time. However, outside of the multiplayer mode, we also made this really robust solo mode that we call the Lone Quest.
Okay.
You you build a matching you get a matching warband, and basically you're going to be going over 6 locations on this beautiful cloth map that we include in the game. There's also a 2-layer recess space player interface for you to track your crone, which is money, and stamina, which is your strength on the march,
Now you said
general morale.
now you said a recessed space.
Yes.
So those markers fit into a little
Yeah,
indentation.
the D10s track values and they fit into a little hole.
That's important. I played a
Yes.
game recently where they didn't do that, and every time you bump the table, it's like, it's like we got to take pictures of our status because you bump the table and now you have no idea.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta be. Also, it's just nicer.
Yeah.
It just feels nicer. But yeah, the Lone Quest is like a 40 to 60 minute game if you make it far enough to almost complete it. We've seen like a 35% success rate in the Lone Quest, which is right on the money for us. We don't want anything that's too easy.
Yeah.
We want you to feel like you earned it when you win. And it features a light legacy feature, which is great. So every time you complete the Lone Quest with a specific warband, you're going to go into the Lone Quest rewards envelope. You're going to pull out the matching warband elder for the warband that you use for that Lone Quest, and you're going to add them to the multiplayer deck. So now you get this really awesome, super powered warband elder that's going to show up in the multiplayer game, and that means you have 8 reasons to play the Lone Quest and win it. And with the quest cards that are included in the random location, each location gets 5 cards. So you're going to have a different Lone Quest every time, and the quest cards are actually story points that are going to give you either like a choice where you're gonna either test fate or battle somebody. Like there's one where there's a duelist on a bridge, and he's like, "If you pay me a crone and win, I'll double your money, or you
Hmm.
can deny me, or you can deny me and take the long way around." Like there's different stuff, and then also the warband that you're playing and warband members that you've defeated in previous battles
Uh-huh.
that can also affect the outcome of quest cards. So there's lots of stuff kind of happening as far as like creating a story. Like each one is its own little adventure.
Yeah. I've never had any interest in playing like a solo game, but I get it, and I respect people that do. Like I've never done cosplay, and that's just not me. But God, I love going to Gen Con and seeing people that really get into it and really do it well. So it's sort of the same thing about like the solo play games. For me, it just didn't occur. It's like for me, gaming is a social thing. It's getting together with friends and stuff, and so I wouldn't really consider that. But I mean, I enjoy doing like puzzles, and that's a solo thing.
I mean,
So that's
I would
cool. There's a big market for it.
yeah, if you like doing a puzzle, you might absolutely love solo game. We produced 6 standalone solo games for the Token Terrors line. plus the game development that we did on the Volta solo game. I just got this in the mail. I want to show the viewers here. I just got this week.
Okay.
This is a solo only game called Witchcraft, and I'm really excited to try it out. And yeah, I mean it's nice, man. It's some self care kind of stuff. You know, you have a cup of coffee, you sit down, you set everything up, you patiently read the book. Maybe you turn on a little classical music, or if you're like me, you turn on some dungeon synth or some stuff that is like thematically in line
Cool.
with the game you're playing. And then you have a moment. You know, you take an hour and you solve a puzzle basically, because that's what they are. It's puzzles where you're either trying to beat a score or complete a task or move one thing from this thing to over there. And I love it because I get the itch to play board games
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And if there's nobody who wants to play with me, then I get to do it anyway. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, our YouTube channel, there's usually three of us that are sitting there, doing our playthroughs and stuff. And it's it's tough to get schedules.
There's that too. The one thing that is a little tricky about solo gaming is when you make like a dumb mistake and you're like, well, I'll just rewind my turn 3 or 4 moves.
Uh-huh.
Or that dice outcome basically means I lose the game, and I only need one more point value to not have the game end right now. Maybe I'll give myself a little bit of grace this time. If it happens again, I'll lose the game. But there's stuff like that happens.
Well, how you justify that is that you take that roll, take the loss, and say, okay, that is a loss, but I'm going to assume that I restarted the game, made all the exact same decisions with the exact same rolls, got to this point, and now I'm going to proceed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big pitfall of solo games too. The setup needs to be like boom, especially if they're hard to play because luckily with Volca, once you do the initial setup, if you fail early, it's very easy to just reset everything and start over. But yeah, we've also seen a lot of interest from the solo community because like if you don't put a solo mode in your games, somebody inevitably will be on the Kickstarter comments being like, "Is there a solo mode?"
Really? See, that's just it's huge, and that's just my inexperience with the gaming. I've been playing games since I was 8 years old. I remember Cosmic Encounter when it first came out. And then Risk and all those, but I haven't really started thinking about it, and doing it like this for just a couple years. And that solo play is just something that never really occurred to me. Another thing that never really occurred to me was like the story games like that are like an escape room, and it's like reading a book. I talked to the designers of the Morrison Game Factory, and I probably shouldn't say this, but nobody's going to watch this anyways. As I'm like talking, I like didn't really realize fully that this game is only playable once. Because it's like a book. You can read the book many times, but once you've read it, you know it. And I'm kind of thinking about, tell me about replayability, and there is not really any replayability there, but yet it's a genre that is popular.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those games are called Exit, right?
What? Like
there's like a legacy escape room series of games, I believe, that's called Exit.
Oh no, this one was called the Morrison Game Factory.
Oh, the Morrison Game Factory. Okay.
Yeah, but
there's a series of solo games that if I'm not mistaken, they're called Exit, and they look like hardcover novels.
Okay.
And when you open them up, you play through them once. They're multiplayer, they're co-op, but I think they do offer a solo mode in most of them. But once you beat it, that's it. And I think they're like under $18 a piece. So like if you get 2 hours out of that, that's not awful. That's not bad.
I spent more on a movie that was shorter. That was horrible experience.
Yeah.
And so it just it's such a rich ecosystem of difference, and different people and different styles and different games. It's it's a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
So I haven't really gotten to any of the questions that I had written down, but I think we've kind of covered everything.
We could try, you want to do like a lightning round kind of thing? I could just try and go quick, like really fast answers. We can just go through real quick.
I have been drinking coffee, and I don't know if you watch The Big Bang Theory, but when Sheldon drinks coffee, he's like literally running around saying zoom, 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 zoom. Well, since I just had some coffee, you're going to get to the point where I'm just going to be like, question, 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 question.
I've had some coffee though. I've never watched The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, you never have?
No.
Oh, it's kind of cool. They play a lot of like board games in it, and it's kind of like a little Easter eggs. Like, hey, what game were they playing? They kind of make up their own if they talk about it. But there's been times where it's just like on the table. It's big, like a uh, nerd type game. I did have a question. Going back to the conventions, I want to hear about one of your like craziest convention stories um, that you have.
Well, I'll bring up two. I'm going to talk about a good one and a good bad one.
Okay.
Um, so 2 years ago, I had like reassured my guys like I kind of needed to be at the booth because that's where people interface with us, and I'm kind of the face of the company because I do our social media stuff, so I
Hmm.
should hang around. And they were like, "Well, we scheduled a black mold demo over at the demo table over there, and like we just think that you would probably handle the demo better and do the teach better and da 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 da." So I go over there, I spend 40 minutes with a group of 4 people, I teach them how to play black mold. I come back, I found out that Tom Vassell stopped by the table looking for me, and I wasn't there. And then cut to a year later where he's reviewing Token Terror's Battlegrounds and gives us a 5 out of 10. I can't help but feel like if I had had a chance to connect with Tom and tell him a little bit about our game, maybe he would have given us more than one play or maybe 2 or 3 plays to see what our system does.
I retract my laughter.
Yeah.
Let me re-edit that.
No, it's okay. I mean, like I'm not saying that relationships matter when it comes to stuff that you deal with, and I just feel like if I had a chance to maybe endear myself a little bit and tell Tom
Yeah.
about the game in person, it might have colored his experience with the game a little bit differently. When he did interact with it, it was just another publisher who sent him another copy of a copy of one of their games.
Yeah.
Um,
Ooh.
then this last PAX, um, there's an RPG company called Exalted Funeral that I did some freelance artwork for, but I never really hung out with them. But they're a bunch of like metalhead punk rock board game people, and I happened to run into one of their owners at the 10th floor bar at the Hilton this past week, or at the past PAX. We're just chatting. I was like, "Oh yeah, I did that freelance for you. It was really fun. It's really good to meet you and everything." And she goes, "We're going to sing karaoke. You want to come along?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." So I go. I had like 1 or 2 drinks before I met up with them. I didn't know that they were going to like a karaoke bottle service room where you rent a room for hundreds of dollars and they just give you booze. And I just had a lot of fun hanging out with them, probably a little bit too much fun. I didn't get back to the hotel on Saturday night until about 4 a.m. from what my hotel roommates tell me. Yeah, I kind of tied one on, which is I was just having a little bit too much fun. But it was just like an absolutely amazing experience because I was hanging out with all these new people, talking about industry stuff,
Yeah.
singing songs, acting like a fool, and I really regretted my choices on Sunday, but I probably wouldn't give that back because it was just a really awesome experience to just hang out with some new people and just be in the moment and have fun being a total dork, singing David Bowie and Styx and Judas Priest.
Oh, ooh, Judas Priest. There we go. Um,
Yeah.
you got to be careful with those bottle service rooms. If they have bottles provided, if you're pouring the drinks, it's one thing, but if they're pouring the drinks, totally different.
The bottles came in sealed.
Right, but
Even like, yeah, you buy the whole. When you buy the room, you get 2 bottles that are unopened, and they just put them in the room with some cups and some ice.
okay, so you serve yourself. Okay, because I've been in
Yeah,
some where they have like people from the club there like pouring them for you,
nah,
and it's like, ugh, it's like 90% Grey Goose, 10% Red Bull,
no. They left them in there. I didn't pour my drinks in a responsible way at all.
I gave you an out, but you did not take it.
No, sorry. I'm honest to a fault. What can I say?
Uh, what's your favorite kind of game to play if you're just like having fun? Like still stick, with the Magic and D&D. That's sort of like the nostalgia games for you.
Yeah, I got a group that meets up monthly, and we do D&D. I'm playing a Fathomless Warlock, Warforged. Pretty cool character.
Okay.
Breathe. I don't know if you know about Warforged. It's kind of a broken species, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I play Magic the Gathering online constantly. I love playing Token Terrors. Any chance I get to play my own game, I'll constantly play Token Terrors. You can play
That's
for
cool.
20 minutes, and it's just a fun little quick skirmish game. Um, recently we got Heat to the table last night. I really love getting new games to the table and seeing what the experience is like. We played Endless Winter recently. We played Heat last night, which was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as like games that I constantly come back to, it is really kind of like, I don't know. I wish I played more table Magic with my buddies and did paper Magic more, but I play Magic Arena like pretty much every day, like at least once a
Okay.
day. Uh, so yeah, and also it's I also like trying to like cordon off some of what would be like maybe solo game time or play Magic by myself online to kick around some design ideas too. Is also sort of a game in a weird way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotcha. Hey, what kind of got you into games way back in the day? Like, what's your earliest core memory, of gaming, whether like good or weird?
Real for real, it was I was playing in bands. I was playing in a bunch of bands, and I needed a bass player for this metal project I was in that did original songs about horror films.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was like, "Yeah, I used to play D&D with my boys back in Pennsylvania. It's a lot of fun. We should try and play it sometime." And I wrote this dragonborn fighter named Abaddon the Destroyer, and we played that campaign for a year and a half.
Wow.
And it was the first time I had ever played D&D, and at the time we were all in like our mid-20s. We didn't have any real responsibilities other than our like regular day jobs, which was all like food service
Okay.
shit.
Yeah.
And so we were chomping at the bit. There was like a solid 6 month period where he was running his campaign, doing 2 sessions a week, easy. Where we were meeting up. We had a room set up for it and everything. After that, they convinced me to try Magic the Gathering, and because they were like, "Dude, D&D worked out. If you like D&D, Magic is like D&D but on cards." And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, let's try it." And I loved it. So then I got obsessed with Magic for a long time. I still kind of am. And after that, if you, I don't know if anybody else understands this about Magic the Gathering. Like, it's not just a game; it's a game that teaches you how to make games. It's so
Okay.
educational. Yeah, once you start looking at the economies, like first of all, it set the tone for what a trading card game is, but the way that the mechanics interact, especially as they introduce new mechanics with new key phrases and card interactions, deck construction, the different ways that you can construct decks, and the formats for multiplayer games where you're doing deck construction types, whether it's draft or limited,
Mm-hmm.
and then looking at synergies and building a deck that is efficient, thinking about mana curve, thinking about card advantage, thinking about removal, thinking about all these different things. It can give you a crash course on how to actually balance and design a game that's your own game.
Interesting.
Yeah, I love Magic for the educational purposes of how it teaches you to think about how different rules play together.
Oh, okay. John, tell me, just as kind of we're wrapping up here, tell me what's next for Terrible Games. What do you got sort of in the brain for coming up, or is this the focus sort of right now on just sort of getting Valka up and going?
Uh, the reason I was one of the reasons I was late to this interview is because I was actually in a conversation with our rulebook editor and graphic designer, getting the final wave of notes for the Volca rulebook completed, which is the last thing we need to do before we press go on getting final proof.
Okay.
Once we get final proof copies, I was told that we might be able to get Volca onto a vessel as early as March, which is our goal because we told our backers we were going to try and deliver in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as Volca delivers, there's going to be about a 1 to 2 week period, and then we're going to drop the campaign for Token Terror Season 2, which is going to introduce 7 new factions that will seamlessly interplay with the factions from Season 1, as well as the blind bag factions that we just released at PAX Unplugged.
Okay.
In the background, I have a 2-player game that is a child family weight game called Gemmicorn Rainbow Poops. That is about
Okay.
It's about color recognition, basic math, and a lot of dice rolling. I've been looking to hire an artist for that. I have some people in mind. And then we have Token Terror Season 3 basically on deck. Additionally, we are going to work on this other game that's called Project Shark Bite, which is an educational shark preservation science related game where you're a researcher zipping around on a boat trying to get footage and pictures of sharks.
Oh, cool.
We also have a co-op kaiju battle game called Kyodai na Robato. which is this cool game where you build skyscrapers out of 1 by 1 inch cubes, and the monster moves down the track with basically a roll and move AI and a deck of cards that you flip over to determine how it attacks the city. And you and the other players are each robot factory magnates who have to pull their resources, searching the buildings for resources in order to build robot parts and construct either a bunch of small robots that can attack them separately, or one giant robot that will probably obliterate the monster if you actually manage to build it in time.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's actually like prototype to the point where it looks basically table ready. It just needs a little bit of tweaking on the rules. I'm obviously working on Cardavers a little bit. And then lastly, I have a couple people who are outside of the company who expressed interest. One of them is a contractor, and two of them are just people who like making games.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on a game called Ruin Shifters, which is going to basically be a trading card game, but the way that you're going to trade things isn't the way you think.
Okay.
We're doing this thing called an archetype, where there's a 3-layer like it's a frame for a large jumbo sized card that's going to feature your god, the god that you're playing as, and you're going to slide it into this archetype. And there's this really cool system where you're using a cursor to basically swing back and forth on this track of light and dark energy.
Okay.
And the only way that you can turn the cursor around so that you don't max out and go into Twilight is basically you run out of gas, is you have to have these cards that tell you to invert your cursor. So you can cast as much as you want, provided that you're swinging within the two extremes of light and dark.
Okay.
And the casting cost of these creatures fit either the light and dark criteria, and some of them are Twilight cards, which can be either light or dark at the same time. So you're basically, the win condition right now is you're going to either summon all your creatures at once, emptying your entire draw pile, or you're going to have controlling influence over the majority of planets that are in play, because you're summoning creatures onto planets and creating influence, and as you either corrupt or purify
Mm-hmm.
the planet of light and dark. Light and dark isn't like good and evil, but you're either purifying or you're corrupting.
Right.
Based on the deity you're playing and based on your archetype overlay, that's going to determine the win condition over influence of the planets. So it's a whole thing. It's got a lot of math. The balancing for it is going to suck. But the economy system for how you summon creatures and the way that the gods style the small, it's like 11 to 14 cards for your creature, your draw deck.
Okay.
So we're doing this one character that's like the god of slasher films, and she looks like Jason Voorhees, but she's got Freddy Krueger's skin and a glove.
Oh, okay.
She's like the goddess of fear and terror. So the things that she creates like a little like scarab beetle, but its shell looks like Jason Voorhees' masks.
Oh, okay.
And instead of like teeth or pincers, it has like 2 machetes that like scissor at the front, and everything's like covered in blood. But then we're also going to have a deity of like soft cuddly things, and she's like covered in a knitted sweater with like a cup of tea, and her creatures are like a koala that's a teapot, like, stuff like that. So each deity is going to offer something different, but the overlays are going to be the random part. We're going to create all of these different overlay archetypes, and those will be blind bagged, and you're going to have to see how they interplay with the gods that you play them as. It's going to limit their light and dark. Anyway, I'm going a little bit too long. We've got lots of plans. Sorry, thanks for letting me talk.
Just so for all you other game designers out there that are struggling, with your one game, what are the 4 other games that you have in your back pocket? To ask yourself that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how would someone best connect with Terrible Games so Black Mold is already out, it's readily available?
No. Black Mold is not delivering until the end of this month that we're in now, so December of 2023. We're actually delivering that to backers in early January of next year.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. That was my bad.
No, that's no problem.
What would be the best way for someone then to connect with you to get Black Mold or Volca? Like, are you still going through Kickstarter? They going direct? How do people find that and get involved?
We're just on the outside of the late pledge stuff for Volca, so in a couple weeks we're going to be able to take late pledges for that. We're just getting some things tied up there. You can pre-reserve a copy of Black Mold either through our pledge manager, which is live right now for the next week or so. We're going to be accepting pre-orders there. You can also pre-order directly from us. If you go to it's tokentears.com is one of them, but I should have said, you can go to terriblegames.info is where you can connect with us. And you can sign up for our mailing list there and get updates when we do things, like go to Kickstarter or whatever else. And you can also purchase everything that we have.
Okay, I'll put those. I'll put that terriblegames.info down in the comments so people can check it out there. So thanks so much for talking to me and spending the time, and thank you guys for watching. We hope to see you next time. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you. This is cool.